Minnesotan Mario Fernandez, a man whose talent with a brush is outstanding, a man whose success has been phenomenal, a man whose story before his painting career unfolded is even more astounding.
I'm originally from Cuba, and after Castro came to power, of course, life became less than desirable there.
Mario Fernandez grew up in Cuba. Nearly 40 years ago, he came to Minnesota. He had just spent 2 years in solitary confinement in a Cuban prison. He was a teenager at that time, accused of organizing a revolution against Cuban dictator Fidel Castro.
I was just a dreamer. I had no idea how the Secret Service worked or anything like that. So after maybe a year and a half of that effort, one day they came to my home at 3 o'clock in the morning and woke everybody up, searched the house, didn't find anything. But when we thought they were leaving, they said, oh, we got to take him along. And it was very hard, obviously, for the family and for me. I was 16 years at the time and totally unprepared for what was to follow. So I spent 2 years in solitary confinement, not really knowing whether or not I would ever be free.
Mario's persistent parents finally convinced the Cuban government that their son Mario was not a threat to Castro, and young Mario was finally released. Despite his early setbacks, Mario's positive attitude and painting talent prevailed.
I came to the United States totally unprepared, but all I knew how to do was draw.
Draw and paint. The works of Mario Fernandez have become treasures. He sold originals for as much as $150,000, but says it's not the money that drives his bus. He claims there's too much commercial painting being done by today's artists.
You have to get that out of your mind. Otherwise, you begin thinking of time equals money, and you, then it does become commercial. You distort the complete concept. So I don't even know whether I'm going to sell a piece or not when I'm painting it, and I try not to think of it. And then when I'm done, I show it to a few people, just get their reaction, and ultimately decide.
Well, it's sort of a catch-22 there. You can't be driven by money. You have to make money to make a living, and yet, I mean, you've done very well. But you still are saying you're paying the price.
Oh, absolutely, and you do have to keep that in mind. The moment you change it, I think the art suffers.
It wasn't until an infamous moment in U.S. history that Fernandez went from doing design work to becoming a full-fledged artist.
In 1981, when Reagan was shot, the president, I just felt moved to do a painting for him, and I did a painting called Spirit of Freedom, and dedicated it to him and eventually presented to him. And then that got me going into painting.
Yes, in a day when patriotism is prominent in America, Edina wildlife artist Mario Fernandez knows better than most the price of freedom. You can see it in his paintings, many depicting America's national symbol, the bald eagle.
I'm a true admirer of this nation, and whenever I am able to do something that renders homage to it, certainly I try to do that.
Mario, I don't know if you have pigeonholed yourself or if it's a niche or what, but your forte really is the eagle.
Yes, and it has certainly not been something I try to do. But the eagle has always been very, very unique for me. A little story, when I was in political prison, I used to imagine that I was an eagle, and I would come out of the cell every night, go home, see my family, and then come back in again. So the idea of the eagle has always been with me.
Mario Fernandez has been commissioned to paint for kings like the King of Spain, queens, and presidents, commissions he calls a privilege. There was the swan painting for Princess Anne of Great Britain.
And one of her formal titles is she's the Lady of the Swans. So she's in charge of the swans in the UK, and it's very, very interesting. It's a soft painting, it's quiet, it reflects a little bit her own personality.
Mario's meeting with then Russian President Gorbachev had an interesting twist for Fernandez.
I had left my country because of a communist regime. he now was the head of communism, and I was in a different country. So we discussed the fact that I now was presenting something to him, and yet I felt very comfortable because I did think that he wanted change. And of course, a few months later we saw that indeed that's what he was trying to do.
To look at a montage of Mario the Master is in itself a thing of beauty. Fernandez, a man to be admired for his heart and his soul, a man whose spirit soars with the eagles.
But what I admired the most, again, was the ability of the American people to rise to whatever occasions were needed. And the last few years, of course, with 9/11, it's been very, very difficult. But again, you see how, despite all of the difficulties, America keeps in charge and keeps growing and keeps doing wonderful things. So I'm very proud to have become an American, and I really do appreciate it immensely. So it's an honor, it's a great honor.